Good morning. My name is Danielle Hopkins, and I am an instructor with the Educational Services team here in Redlands, California. Joining me today is Don Keeney, who is the Esri CAD Product Manager, also based here in Redlands, California. Welcome. In this seminar, you will learn how ArcGIS for AutoCAD fits into the ArcGIS system and what it can do for you. You will see how GIS data can be prepared in the AutoCAD environment with little to no impact on established workflows, as well as how ArcGIS server services can be accessed for viewing, editing, and the extraction of geodatabase data. The format of this seminar will be 3 portions. Each one of them will be made up of a discussion, demonstration, review, and time for questions and answers. Please send your questions in at any time during the presentation, and Don will get to as many as possible. To begin, we must recognize that things have been changing with Esri products. ArcGIS is no longer just a software that you run on your desktop or some extension that you install and run to get this or that GIS functionality. ArcGIS is rather a complete system for geographic information. It allows you to discover, create, manage, visualize, and analyze geographic information and then collaborate with others on the same subject. The ArcGIS system provides GIS capabilities for the environment you're working in and within the appropriate computing environment as well. ArcGIS is about using maps and the distribution of vector data from those maps. It is about creating and sharing GIS data through the exchange of local files and the exchange of information, analytics, and data over the web using GIS services. These could be hosted within your enterprise or in the cloud. Now, the ArcGIS system is for everyone. It's for iPhone people, IT people, it's for business development people and engineering people. It's for desk clerks and for professional consultants. In this session, we are going to talk about the ArcGIS system for those people who need to work in AutoCAD. We are going to talk about ArcGIS for AutoCAD. ArcGIS for AutoCAD is a free software application that you download from Esri.com and then install on top of AutoCAD to provide interoperability between AutoCAD and ArcGIS. This plugin really does 2 main things. It allows you to create and edit ArcGIS data inside AutoCAD DWG files. It also allows you to connect to and use ArcGIS for server services. These ArcGIS services open a path for you to work with intelligent ArcGIS maps, access imagery, extract GIS features as CAD entities, add GIS features as an external reference, and edit enterprise ArcGIS geodatabases, all within AutoCAD. As I mentioned, ArcGIS for AutoCAD is about providing interoperability. Put simply, this would be CAD in GIS and GIS in CAD. Some of you might be familiar with the left side, working with CAD within ArcGIS for desktop. Here we are able to use CAD drawings for mapping, visualization, and in fact for analysis as well. You can also incorporate or load CAD data into your GIS databases as they form an abundant source of digital data. Not only can we interact with CAD data and bring it into the GIS system, it's also possible to export CAD drawings from ArcGIS using the geoprocessing tools, such as Export to CAD. Now, approaching this from the other direction, we can use ArcGIS for AutoCAD to bring GIS into CAD. Using the plugin, you will be able to view GIS content from within AutoCAD. This data can range from aerial photographs to online base maps to your own organization's data. You can also improve the use of CAD drawings when interpreted by the GIS. By preparing the drawing with certain properties and definitions using the ArcGIS for AutoCAD tools, information can be passed smoothly and directly between the two softwares. As well as these basics, you can also edit and extract data from geodatabases within AutoCAD. In viewing this graphic, I'm sure you can identify at least one or two of these tasks that you are currently facing. So let's take a look at what is possible as soon as you install the ArcGIS for AutoCAD plugin. In this demonstration, I will use ArcGIS for AutoCAD to add two online services to provide background information as I work on the new drawing. I will both view and query those services for more information. Now, this is a drawing in the area of Riverside, California, and I'm planning to work with this drawing a little bit today, entering in some new line work and preparing it for a GIS project we will be involved in. Now, this is a regular AutoCAD DWG file, and I am working in AutoCAD 2012. Now, I have in fact installed ArcGIS for AutoCAD plugin, but you can see that my CAD environment remains its familiar self. The main thing that ArcGIS for AutoCAD has done is to add one menu item to the interface, giving us a ribbon to work with the new functionality. As I said, I'd like to get a little more visual context for the information in the area I'm working in. So to do this, I'm going to add an Esri map with aerial imagery in it. When I click the Add Esri map, I gain access to 9 different base maps that are available for me to put in the background. I'm going to choose World Imagery, as this will give me some of the aerial photographs available, and I'm also going to go ahead and apply a transparency to this because I'd like for the drawing to really stand out over top of that imagery, since that is in fact what I'm working with, of course. Now you'll notice that the map service promptly lines up well with my drawing, and this is because I had a coordinate system set in the drawing prior to bringing in the map service. In the ribbon, we actually have a tool available for us to be able to assign a coordinate system, remove a coordinate system, and list a coordinate system, as we will do now. You can see that this drawing, in fact, it had it assigned previously the State Plane, California coordinate system. Okay. Well, now I'm interested in getting a little more information about this area, in particular the soils. Along the edge of my drawing, I've also got a community area here, and I want to know a little more. In order to get this information, I'm going to add another service that's hosted by ArcGIS Online. So I'm going to add in a service, this time from a specific server. And I've got the connection information for ArcGIS Online here. Now, ArcGIS Online hosts a great variety of services. And I'm going to look in here at specialty services, in particular the soil survey map. I'm going to add in the full extent of this service, and I'm going to give it a transparency as I add it in. Again, we're overlaying quite a few different maps here, so transparency helps quite a bit. Notice that I get a lot of metadata available for me to know more and more about this service. This is also a map service coming from ArcGIS Online. So I've included that into my drawing, and in fact now you kind of see this green coloring to my drawing, and that's because the symbology for the soil service is the green. Now to see that I have got multiple services and drawings added in here, I have the ability to look at the GIS contents for my drawing. So I click on that and it will list for me which services and which feature classes, which I'll talk about in the next section, are included in my drawing. So I have the world imagery, which I added in first, and I've also got the soil survey map overlaid. Now, if I look at this display, I can see some of the labeling from that soil service already appearing. But there's a lot more information than just that I can retrieve from the service. So I can use the ArcGIS for AutoCAD identify, and I'm going to identify on the soil survey map. And I'll just look at this little, at the field, just at the edge of my drawing. So it goes through and it queries that map service, and it brings me back all the information that's being served out and available about that area and the soils. Now, I might point out that when you work with the services, it's a good idea to take a look at the different map layers that are available from the service. In this case, there's actually 3, giving us a very rich resource of information. So in this section, we discussed what ArcGIS for AutoCAD is, as well as the opportunities for interoperability that it offers for working with CAD in GIS and GIS in CAD. I'll pass things over to Don now to answer some of your questions.
Well, great. Thanks, Danielle. Let's go ahead and get into some great questions that you're submitting. A number of you have asked the same question, but I'll take this question from Daniel in Rockland. Are you using AutoCAD or AutoCAD Map 3D, and does vanilla AutoCAD now support coordinate systems? Well, in this presentation, we're using just plain AutoCAD. The plugin is designed to work with AutoCAD. You can use the product with other versions of AutoCAD that may include Map or Civil 3D or Architectural Desktop. The product is going to install and work with the AutoCAD that you have. And the second part of that question, a number of people were also asking about the coordinate system. The coordinate system is one of the aspects that the plugin adds to the drawing. So although some other add-on products may have their own versions of the coordinate system, we can't rely on those to be in AutoCAD. So the plugin allows us to define an Esri coordinate system, and that way when Danielle brings in information from whatever coordinate system, those are going to be projected on the fly. Another question here, do we need to have ArcGIS software installed on the PC in order for the plugin to work in AutoCAD? The answer to that question is no, just the free plugin is enough. It's similar to other free downloadable applications from Esri. You can download the plugin, use its functionality, and connect to the ArcGIS system. A question from Chase in North Wales. How are projected coordinate systems handled? Does one of the program settings drive the projection being used? What if each program or map has a different projection in play? Similar to the first question, the coordinate system is defined in the drawing, and then AutoCAD has a huge coordinate, Cartesian coordinate plane that you're working with. So once defined, any map that comes in from a different projection will be projected on the fly. So for example, in Danielle's drawing, she was using a state plane coordinate system. She was connecting to ArcGIS Online where maps are being hosted in a web Mercator projection, for example, and all those come in the right location once that coordinate system is defined in the drawing. Nathan from Kansas City asked, how does ArcGIS for AutoCAD utilize geodatabase versions? Well, we're going to get to that later in the presentation, but know that when we do connect up to geodatabases later on through a feature service, all that information is going to be handled on the server side when I'm authoring a map. Jen from Gainesville asks, is it compatible with ArcGIS 10? And so I'm assuming we're talking about ArcGIS for Server 10. And the answer to that question is yes. And in fact, some of the functionalities such as the image service and the feature service have only been made available at ArcGIS 10. It will also support ArcGIS for Server versions 9.3.1 and higher. Eric from Woodbury asked, can we also edit geodatabase or file geodatabase or only enterprise? Well, when we get to the section on editing geodatabases, we're going to notice that it's set up on a feature service, which are on top of enterprise geodatabases. Jalia from Houston asks, can I export GIS data to a DWG format with attributes? And the answer to that question is yes. Whenever I export data from ArcMap, for example, I'm going to be creating a DWG file that contains attributed feature classes, and that's really the topic of Danielle's next segment. Matthew from Harrisburg asked, what is a DWG file? DWG files are just the native file format of AutoCAD. Carrie from Boonton asked, is ArcGIS for AutoCAD compatible with AutoCAD 2013? The current version available, well, just made available on last Friday, works with AutoCAD versions 2010 to 2012. That's Windows version 32-bit and 64-bit versions. The AutoCAD 2013 version we intend to release shortly, hopefully around the end of September, perhaps early October is kind of what we're looking at now. Ellen from Milwaukee asks, does AutoCAD allow for the import of owner names from the county GIS property data? Well, we'll take a look at some of those scenarios a little bit later when we talk about getting information from a feature service. But basically the answer to that question is yes. Okay, those are great questions. Keep them coming, then let's get back to Danielle.
Very good. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Dawn. These are really good questions. So like you said, please keep bringing those in or sending them in to us. Alrighty, well, moving on, we will now look at how ArcGIS for AutoCAD allows for the preparation of data for GIS. So perhaps you are working with CAD groups that are outside your organization, a contractor perhaps, and you want to create the best and most direct way to move data between the two software products. By applying some of the following methods with ArcGIS for AutoCAD, you can make this become a very straightforward process. Looking at how data is organized, on the left you can see that CAD divides the entities using layers. These layers may follow a CAD standard or may be organized by the individual CAD operator. They also contain one or more geometries, but entities can also be organized using colors and symbols. When GIS interprets a CAD drawing, it will organize the drawing entities into a standard set of feature classes based on geometry type. These feature classes are grouped into a feature data set, which is in fact the drawing. Now, wouldn't it be nice if you could have feature classes in the drawing that match your geodatabase? Perhaps you have center lines, and lot numbers, and you'd like to see them listed as part of your drawing. Well, this is possible using the tools provided in ArcGIS for AutoCAD. ArcGIS feature classes are defined in AutoCAD files using a filtering criterion, and this criterion is based on AutoCAD graphic entity properties such as layer name, color, or line style. Because of this, you can use your existing CAD drafting standards as the basis to define how your drawing will be organized into GIS feature classes. So, for example, suppose you have an established CAD drafting standard where the street center lines are drawn on an AutoCAD layer called CL, and you are required to create an ArcGIS feature class in your drawing called centerlines. To accomplish this, you simply use the plugin's user interface to define the ArcGIS centerlines feature class to be those linear entities in your AutoCAD drawing that reside on the AutoCAD CL layer. From this point, any existing lines on this layer are automatically considered part of the ArcGIS feature class. Any future lines drawn on the layer will also be in the ArcGIS centerlines feature class. A second feature class could be defined as lot lines. This would include entities from the PL layer and some from entities from the BND layer. The relationship between AutoCAD layers and the ArcGIS feature classes do not have to be one-to-one. You can have many layers contributing to one feature class, as you can have one layer contributing to many feature classes. Let's take a look at how we can go about this using the AutoCAD plugin. I'm going to continue working with this new track drawing from the previous demonstration, but this time I'm going to prepare it for collecting GIS information. I've already removed the soils and the world imagery services because we don't need them for this purpose, and also I think you'll see this demonstration a little more clearly. So what I want to do here is define 3 GIS feature classes in this drawing. By doing this, I'm allowing for entities that are created on the native CAD layers to be interpreted by ArcGIS as not only members of a line feature class, but also members of other GIS feature classes as well. So first, I'm going to take these red road center lines entities, and I'm going to define them as members of a new feature class called centerlines. So on the ArcGIS for AutoCAD ribbon here, I'm going to use the new feature class tool. I'll give it a name, centerlines, and I'm going to make this of type polyline. Now I know that those entities that I'd like to participate in this feature class reside on a layer in my drawing called CLS, which is my centerlines layer. I can use the preview button here to verify that those entities that I wish to have as members of this feature class are highlighted and that my filter is working properly. Now at the same time as providing a filter for the new feature class members, I can also create new GIS attribute fields to be stored within the drawing. So I'm going to give this one here a new field called status. I'm going to use this shortly in the demonstration. So for now, I'll save my new feature class definition. I will quickly make 2 more feature classes. The first one is going to be called lot lines. This too will be a polyline feature class. And this time, I know that my lot lines reside on a layer called lot lines. So I'm going to use a filter for layer is equal to lot lines. Now, if I didn't know that they resided on lot lines, what I could do is use this option here, select from entity. And this allows me to click on a sample entity or one of the entities that I'd like to be included. So there you see that it picks up which layer it resides on in the drawing. Okay, now I'd like to create one more feature class in this drawing, and it's going to be called lot text. This one will be of type annotation. And again, I'm going to use one of the layers to pull out the entities that I'd like, or to add these entities as part of this feature class. The layer this time will be track text. Now here you'll see the value of using this preview and verifying your filters. Because when I do the preview, I notice that it also highlights all of this surround text that's part of my drawing. But what I really want is only the lot numbers. And I know that those lot numbers have been drawn with the color cyan. So I'm going to put a second filter on this based on the color. Then I do my preview again, and I see that now I'm highlighting those entities that I'd like to be able to capture with this filter. All right. Well, at this point, you could save your drawing and just continue to work like you always do within this drawing, carrying on with your regular AutoCAD workflows. If you wished, you could also add in an extra step in order to populate some of the GIS attributes that are now part of this drawing. So, for example, when we created the Centerlines feature class, we added in an attribute item called status. So I could use on the ArcGIS for AutoCAD ribbon, I can use the attributes button or tool, and this will now bring up the attributes dialog for the feature that I've highlighted, or for the entity that I highlighted. So I'm going to populate this with a status of proposed, and now that particular entity has got that attribute. Well, this works very well if you're working with one at a time. However, in fact, all of these roads need to have a status of proposed assigned. So I can use the attribute table that's provided by ArcGIS for AutoCAD, and here I can highlight those fields that I want to populate. I hit F2 to bring up the value box, and I fill in the value that I'd like to put for all of these different entities. Now I've populated those, I'm ready to go, and I've done this as more of a bulk assignment. So at this stage, I am going to go ahead and save my drawing. I'm going to save it as new track done, and in fact I'm going to overwrite the one that I already have. Now let's see how this affects things. Everything that I have been doing, the data and all of these new feature classes, are stored within the AutoCAD file, the DWG in this case. So if I open up ArcMap now and I display this drawing, so I'm going to go ahead and say add data. It's my done drawing. I'm going to add the whole drawing to my display just to illustrate a couple of points. You can add each individual feature class if you wish. When I expand this, and actually I should have showed you that also when I do the add data, notice that this will look like what we saw in the slides. I have my standard AutoCAD or CAD actually feature classes, but I've also got the 3 special ones that we created in the drawing. So in this case I've added in all of the feature classes from the CAD drawing, or I added the whole drawing basically. So what I'm going to do here is turn them all off, and I'd like to illustrate how these feature classes work. If I turn on the polyline feature class, you'll see that here I've got all of the line features, or anything that was designated as lines within my drawing. I can turn that off now and see that when I turn on my lot lines, I'm still getting lines, but it's pulling out only those that are a part of this feature class because of the filter that I set in the drawing. Same with the center lines. Please remember, these are just filters. Everything has been stored in the drawing in the usual way using the AutoCAD layers. So how can we apply what we just learned in the demonstration to your workflows with the least amount of disruption? Well, there's 2 options. You can go through and manually set a coordinate system, the GIS feature classes, and the service connections within your drawing and save those in. And this is going to be best if you're only going to create one drawing. But if you intend to create multiple drawings for interchange, then you probably should be creating a template, an AutoCAD template file that will store those same settings. This will mean that you only have to make those settings once, and then all of the operators could use that template file and quickly learn the standard. Even with the template route, you still have more options. You can continue to work in the way that you always have, applying your standard CAD workflows. Or you can also apply those workflows and add in an extra step or 2 to be able to edit the GIS properties too. In this section, we have reviewed some CAD GIS terminology. The methods for creating GIS data within AutoCAD have been demonstrated, and how these methods could be incorporated into your workflow has been discussed. Now I'm going to pass things over to Dawn to take a few more of your questions that I can see coming in. So thank you very much. Dawn?
Yeah, excellent, Daniel. Okay, let's get into those questions. Oleg from Oakland asked, when creating a feature class, can I use multiple filter criteria, i.e. both layers, color, and line type? And yes, you can. And so when defining the membership of entities that you're drawing and how you want them to be considered as feature classes, I think Daniel did that with the lot text, right? So she was filtering not only based on the layer, but additionally on the color. So only those things on that layer with that color were in there. Likewise, she could also do the reverse and take multiple layers and push them to a single feature class. Eric from Hesperia says, does a plugin work in model space and paper space for AutoCAD entities? And the answer to that is yes. So you can be looking at different views of your AutoCAD drawing, and the plugin will work in both of those views. Patricia from Charlotte asks, how does this affect the size of the drawing file? That's a good question. Because we're not creating new objects when we're defining feature classes, but rather just filtering the drawing, the size of the drawing doesn't increase when based on its geometries. All those geometries are just the standard AutoCAD entities. There's a little additional information that's added into the drawing as non-graphic information. That's where the attributes are stored. So there's a little bit of text that are technically stored in X records on those objects in the drawing that increases the size just a little bit. Oleg from Oakland asks, I noticed that ArcGIS for AutoCAD created its own exe file when I installed it. Then when I load AutoCAD normally, the ArcGIS for AutoCAD does not install. Well, that's because the application is a DLL that you invoke, and you can use other techniques for net loading it. We provide you with a desktop shortcut that basically just loads AutoCAD and then net loads the application. And you can use different AutoCAD techniques for launching the application that shows that ribbon that you can access. Lynn from Shoreline asks, where are the feature classes and data elements stored? Are they in object data or X data, or where are they? Well, they're stored, again, like I said, as normal entities, and there's a little piece of data stored in an X record that manages both the filtering criteria and then any attributes that you add to any entity in the drawing. Lester from Missoula asks, can the plugin handle conversions such as polylines to polygons? It's a great question, but no, the application is not, it doesn't have like a toolbox of a lot of those GIS-related data cleanup tools. Really, it's designed to work with lines, points, and polygons, and allow you to create those. So if you needed to, you could take information in a linear network, and then when you move it over to ArcGIS, you can use the toolbox there to convert those into polygons. Ryan from Raleigh asked, can you bring existing client-specified feature classes into AutoCAD? And by that, I'm assuming you want to be able to use a schema from someone else. And there's a couple ways that you can do that. If some other CAD drawing has a schema in it that you want, there's a tool or a button that you push that you can import the schema from another drawing. Also know that anytime you're in ArcMap and you export data, even blank data, into an AutoCAD file, it creates these feature classes with all that attribute and schema information in it, as well as the coordinate system definition. Scott from Seattle asks, how does ArcGIS for AutoCAD implement versioning? We're going to get to that in the last section, but essentially it's set on the ArcGIS server side. When I author a map, I specify a version of the data it's based on, and when I serve it out into a feature service, it's going to be, that feature service is going to be tied to that version. Lynn from Shoreline asks, is there a map service that would allow me to access USGS and DRG data? And the answer to that is most likely. By looking at the information included on ArcGIS Online, or even querying that, you should be able to find all kinds of information in map services and potentially even feature services that are hosted by those organizations. Sarah and a number of people are asking, are there Bing maps available to be used in ArcGIS for AutoCAD? Well, the Bing maps are a little bit different in that they're not actual ArcGIS map services. They're a base map service that's provided with just a little bit different technology. So at this time, there's not support for the Bing maps. I like to create a composite map from like World Imagery and Street Map or the topography map that gives me about the same thing. Alan from Miami asks, will there be an integration of the plugin for will there be an integration of ArcGIS plugin for AutoCAD in the future? I guess this is the plugin for AutoCAD. That reminds me of the question, and maybe this was a mistype. A lot of people are asking about MicroStation as well. Currently, there's not plans for a MicroStation plugin, but ArcGIS for Server does allow me to publish WMS services and WFS services that MicroStation can consume in a similar way. Ori from Valhalla asks, is there a way to freeze aerial imagery once it's imported into AutoCAD? So a map service, once displayed in ArcGIS for AutoCAD, you can freeze it in a couple of different ways. One is you can disconnect it and create an AutoCAD raster entity in the drawing. That's one way to freeze it. The other one is that you can turn one of the properties of the map service is whether or not it updates dynamically as you pan and zoom around. You can temporarily suspend that dynamic behavior and then freeze it, move to where you want, and then ask for maps upon request. So there's both ways to do that. Okay, I think that's what we have time for now. Let's get back to Danielle and Future Services.
Very good. Thank you. Keep those questions coming in. We will have one more round to be able to get to them. Well, the methods that we've been discussing so far, and in particular in the last section, involve working with local files, drawing files. If you have ArcGIS for Server, or the people that you are working with do, an alternative is to use services for some of your workflows. In this last section, you will learn how to use ArcGIS Server services within AutoCAD. As we have previously seen, services can be used for context and inquiry as CAD drawing is being worked on. In addition, it's possible to push and in fact pull content to and from the geodatabase directly using a feature service rather than a map service. You will see this in the following section as I do the demonstration. Now, when we're working in AutoCAD, you of course have the CAD drawings. As just mentioned, services can be added for visual context and information. These would be base maps and map services. With recent releases of ArcGIS for AutoCAD, even more service types can be used within AutoCAD. Image services provide further imagery for viewing. Locator services allow you to quickly find your working area. And feature services allow for accessing the geodatabase from the drawing. These services may be provided by Esri, and/or they may be your own functional maps being served out using ArcGIS Server. They may also be services served out by organizations that you're working with. When we speak of editing geodatabase data, this is in fact possible through the use of a feature service published by ArcGIS for Server. Using the standard feature service editing workflows, ArcGIS for AutoCAD provides tools for editing GIS features and assigning attributes. Often, organizations will export a series of shapefiles and/or drawing files on a regular interval and post them for download by others internally and sometimes for use by external customers. What I will show you next in the demonstration is the extraction of data from a feature service, thus eliminating the need for any intermediate files. So let's go ahead and take a look at this process. So in this demonstration, we're going to be working in an area of Maury County, Tennessee. I'll be adding a map service to show the basic data and get acquainted with the area I'll be working in. Next, I'm going to add in a feature service and perform some simple edits, followed by extracting some data from the same feature service into my drawing. This map has been published as a map service by Maury County. As you can see, the map service includes some context data that's been stored, in this case, in a SQL Express database, but it could be any of the other supported enterprise geodatabases or enterprise databases. Now, the data that we've included here include things such as buildings, parcels, and streets, and this would be provided for context. But what it also includes are the water lines and hydrants the county is interested in having in their AutoCAD clients edit. So for this reason, the map has also been published as a feature service. Now I'm just going to go ahead and save this drawing, just to make sure that everything is all added to my drawing palette for the editing, which I'm going to do in just a moment. Now, as one of the CAD operators on the project, I would like to first add a background map and the GIS map service to become familiar with the area. So I'm going to go ahead and say add in a service. Immediately, I get a message letting me know that there is no coordinate system set in this drawing, and it gives me the opportunity to specify one. We will be adding in a map service that's coming from the county, and it holds the correct coordinate system for this project. So I'm going to ignore this message at this time and allow my drawing to assume the coordinate system from the map service. Now, I've already entered in the information for my county server. So I'm going to go ahead and connect to that server, and I'm going to navigate, and first of all, I'm going to include the map service. This map service, I'm going to bring it in at the full extent of the service, and I'm going to right away apply a transparency here. I use transparency quite a bit as I overlay all of the different layers and services within the map. And when I talk about layers here, I'm talking about the fact that I'll have all of my drawing, and I'm also going to have different services coming in. Now looking at this, you can see that this is a map service, and I'm going to include that again for visual context of the data. So you can see that this matches that map document that I showed you a few minutes ago that the county was publishing. Now if I want to double check on that whole coordinate system that we were dealing with earlier, let me go up to ArcGIS for AutoCAD, and I can list the coordinate system for this drawing now. When I do that, you can see that we're now working with the state plane for Tennessee, and this was adopted from the map service, again, that was being served out by Maury County. Now, I know that I'm going to be working in an area close to Chapman Lane, and to find this area, rather than doing my usual zooming and panning around manually, what I'm going to do is use a locator service that's available to me from ArcGIS Online. There are actually 3 locator services available. I'm going to use the one for North America, and I'm going to type in the street name, and it's actually in the town of Columbia. Now, if I had put in an actual street number, I would get an even more precise location. But I have found the actual street that I want to be working close by to, so I'm going to zoom over to that street using the located location or address based on Chapman. And now you'll see displayed, this is the same maps, this is the map service for the area I'll be working in. So I'm just going to change the display ever so slightly to make sure that I've got the area, which is right over here, where we're going to be adding in 2 new water lines and 2 new hydrants. Now, when I'm working, I like to have a little bit more of a realistic context to where I'm going to be placing these. So I can again use the Esri maps and the world imagery, in this case again, in order to provide that. There we go. So I've realized that I need to be able to add in a new 2 new water lines and hydrants for one of the properties over in this area. To do this, I'm going to use a feature service that's also hosted by the county. So go ahead and add in the service, again going to the county server. We'll navigate and specify the feature service. Now rather than bringing in all of the features for this drawing, I'm going to bring in just the current view. And actually it's all the features not only for the drawing but from this service. So you have a lot of options. So I'll bring them in for the current view. Notice that this is a feature service and the capabilities that have been enabled are query and editing. So let's go ahead and add those in. Now something that I wanted to indicate for you is that when we work in our AutoCAD drawings, we can get a better idea of what is going on for our GIS contents by using this GIS Contents tool. So it opens up a nice panel over here. You could call it a table of contents for our GIS contents, but this panel includes a listing of the map services that are in my drawing, and also now all of the GIS layers that are coming in from the feature service. You do have a lot of functionality here in order to control how you see these various different services coming in on the right click. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure you could see that. And there was a question earlier relating to the dynamic nature of the services. So that's right there. You can also work with that up in your ribbon. All right, so let's get on with adding in our new features. And I call them features because in actual fact, I'm going to be editing using this feature service that is serving me data from a geodatabase. Okay, so the area I want to work in is right over here. And I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the tools that have been provided by ArcGIS for AutoCAD for creating these new features. This set of tools really just helps me be able to make sure that they're being created on the correct layers, AutoCAD layers. So let me click on the tool, and now I can enter in my new water line. I'm going to put one just up there at that point in the property, and then I'm actually going to use some standard tools. So I could go back here and use the same one, or I can use my standard AutoCAD drawing tools, and I would be able to, in that case, create a new water line in that method. All right, so I've got the two new water lines added, and the next thing I need are hydrants. Again, I can use the tool palette here to add in a fire hydrant at the end of the water line, or I could use also the standard tools in AutoCAD. I'll take this one, and this is an interesting one. I'm going to take this and I'm going to place it at the end of this water line. Okay, now that I've added in the new information that I want to do, I also want to go back and save this back to the server so everyone else can see the changes that I've made. Now I could go over here to the left and synchronize these or save these on a layer by layer basis. But I'm going to go ahead and use this Synchronize All, which will give me an initial panel here or window that tells me that two new hydrants are going to be added and two new water mains or water lines are going to be added. So I say, yes, I want to proceed, and then it gives me a report of what was actually done. Good. Successful with two each. The last stage is that it goes back and looks at the feature service, and it brings back any new information for me. So other people are using this feature service, so I need to make sure that I'm up to date with the information that was added by them. Now, looking at this drawing, it's a little bit hard to tell from the display here, but behind my feature service, I've also got my map service. So I'm going to just turn some of these off so that you have the ability to see my map service and see that the changes have been put straight in there. Now you can see in the background that these new, and I call them features because they're stored over in the geodatabase, are now added. Likewise, I can also look in ArcMap. Anyone looking at these feature classes in the geodatabase that are also included in this map, whenever they refresh their display, I can see these new additions. Okay. I'm also interested, as part of our project, I want to be working over at an area that we have been interested in doing a little bit of development in. And I'm finding that these map services from the county are so valuable with all of this local information. So again, I'm going to use the Locate, and we're going to head over to Dahlia Lane in the same town. Again, if I'd been a little more precise with house numbers, we would have gotten a single location. But I find that it's very nice to be able to use this and just get to the area that I want to work in. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit here so that you can see that the area we're interested in is actually just over here. Let me just refresh my display. There we are. So what you see is my imagery in the background, as well as my map service overlaid. And this is the area that we're interested in the development. So what I'd like to do is actually create a drawing that stores some of this information. So I can actually extract it from the same feature service that we were working with. So let me go ahead and look at that feature service again. Now as I look at this, I can limit what area I want to download. So I don't need to do the whole thing. So this time I'm just going to do the current view to get the information surrounding this area I want to develop. Now the reason that this is possible is because I'm again using a feature service, and it has one capability in particular, the query. So it is possible to publish services that are for download only and that you aren't allowing people to edit. In our case, the same service is being used for both purposes. But a read-only service can allow the extraction. Now, looking down here on the right, I have the button here for extract. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And you see that in my drawing, I now have local feature classes. They have the same names as my feature service did because I've extracted the entities now into my drawing. So I've taken the features from the feature service, brought them into my drawing, and they're now part of my drawing and living on CAD layers within that drawing as well. Now, publishing this feature service saves the county a great deal of time and effort in exporting, updating, and posting shapefiles or drawings. In addition to the time savings, they also benefit by receiving drawings with the correct coordinate system and data setup, thus receiving better data. Now, I as a consumer have also benefited by having up-to-date information available at any time. If I now saved my drawing, this information would remain stored in the drawing for reference or even archiving purposes. So in this section, we used ArcGIS server services and set up editing and extracting of data within AutoCAD. Don will now answer the last bunch of questions from you now. Go ahead, Don.
Okay, great. Again, just a lot of great questions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get to, after the program, get back to you guys on some of these great questions that I'm just not able to get to. So let's just dive into it. Susan asks, can you edit vector data that originates in ArcGIS using ArcGIS for AutoCAD? And the answer to that is yes, and that's the focus of the demo that we just saw, this information being stored in an ArcGIS geodatabase, made accessible through a feature service and then editing it, which is plain AutoCAD. Yazid from Singapore asks, can you import existing shapefiles into ArcGIS for AutoCAD? And in this case, no, except for if you were going to export it with Desktop GIS. The plugin itself does not have the capability to read local files other than a DWG file or a DXF file. Alan asks, will the plugin be made available for AutoCAD LT soon? And the answer to that question is no, because the AutoCAD LT doesn't have the sufficient API to maintain or to support the plugin. So it will work with full versions of AutoCAD that would include, Civil 3D, Map 3D, or Architectural Desktop because of the fact that they have AutoCAD in them. Nico asks, can I define 3D features? And the answer to that, let me be careful, is that when I'm creating feature classes based on entities in the drawing, this is data that's bound to the drawing and that I'm passing forth as a local file, yes, I can create a feature class called a multi-patch, which is typically comprised of 3 polygons that have elevation or things like AutoCAD 3D faces. There is not a 3D feature service, so the technology that Danielle was just showing, editing information over the web through a service, there currently isn't a a 3D feature service. The same is true for an annotation feature class. There just isn't a feature service for annotation at this time, but you can create an annotation feature class in the file bound. Matthew from Scott Air Force Base asks, how do new DWGs impact those who don't have the plugin? So if you have information stored in a drawing and there's attributes and feature classes, well, what will other people see? Well, they won't see anything different. It's just a plain AutoCAD drawing with plain AutoCAD entities. Those attributes are just sitting around, not getting in the way. They won't be able to see them. They won't be able to touch them. They can just use the AutoCAD DWG file like they normally would. They can continue to edit that file, and if they put things on the correct layers, they could actually, enhance the drawing and modify it, and it would still be recognized as a GIS data set, so they wouldn't be able to really mess it up. They could just use it. Jennifer from Huntington Beach says, is there a labeling feature included in this plugin? And the answer to that is no, not right now, but it's one of the things that we recognize that we really need to add soon, and we're looking to add that functionality in short order, so the ability to label objects. If you are working with feature services, one way to accomplish labeling is, if that data is also living in a geodatabase, is to include a companion map service that has labeling being labeled by ArcGIS server, in which case that way you could see labels based on feature attributes in your drawing. That's one way to see that. Question from Sarah in Mountain View: can I import AutoCAD into ArcMap without having AutoCAD on my computer? And the answer to that is yes. Any of these AutoCAD files that you're creating with the plugin will be able to be read by ArcMap, and you don't need AutoCAD to do it. Steve from Las Vegas asks, if the drawing was previously georeferenced with a world file, can that be applied in AutoCAD? The idea there is that you drew a file in a local coordinate system, and then you went over to ArcMap, and then you repositioned the drawing so that it would fit into the GIS. You didn't modify the coordinates in the AutoCAD file, and you've created this ancillary thing in ArcGIS called a world file. Well, there isn't a way to automatically apply that world file. I think in the past there have been, people have written customized routines that fix the AutoCAD drawing by actually moving and scaling and rotating. So the best practice is, if you have access to AutoCAD, is to, position or reposition the drawing, change the coordinates in the drawing so that it does line up. And you can use things like feature services to help you snap to real GIS features that are in the right coordinates. And you can do it, use the plugin to help you do that. Brian from Fort Collins asks, can fill patterns from ArcGIS be brought into AutoCAD, like, for example, storm water floodplains? The answer to that is not specifically in a vector format, but like I mentioned before, if you have information stored in ArcGIS and you want it to display in AutoCAD, a map service, which is just a raster backdrop, can be a great way to display that type of cartography in the drawing. So you notice, for example, in Danielle's example, she had that water system being drawn both in AutoCAD when she's working with the entities as simple points, but also she had the cartography of those fire hydrants that were more complex as a backdrop. And I mentioned before, labeling can be accomplished that way too. Samuel from Portland asks, can you access private feature servers in ArcGIS Online for organizations? This is an interesting question, and this is a story that's kind of unfolding. If I have ArcGIS server installed, what we call on-premise, this is my ArcGIS server and I'm managing it, I can publish feature services and map services of my data, and all of the people in the ArcGIS system can access this information: my iPhone users, my web users, my desktop users, my AutoCAD users. There's a new form of server that I can spin up in the cloud. That new server in the cloud supports a couple of protocols, but one of them that ArcGIS for AutoCAD relies on is not there at this time. So although I can publish information in ArcGIS Online, and it can be based, I can publish a feature service that points back to an on-premise server, I can access that information. But currently, if I spin up the actual data in the cloud, we don't have access to that at this time. Nico asks, is there an integration with Workflow Manager for ArcGIS Server? There is not a specific integration with Workflow Manager and ArcGIS for AutoCAD at this time. Ryan from Raleigh asks, how current are the Esri maps and the world maps? And I would say they're some of the most current versions of imagery and data that you can find. Stephen from Millbrook asks, can I access and edit file geodatabases? And the answer to that question is no. The plugin is working with GIS data that's either inside the AutoCAD file or data that's coming through a feature service, and feature services are based on enterprise geodatabases. I'll move up to just a couple more here. Will the process work for this? Will the process work the same on versioned geodatabases? And the answer to that question is, when you're editing a geodatabase, essentially they're all versioned. So the author of the map specifies which version they want to serve out into a feature service. And so essentially you're always working on a version. It may be the default, but the system administrator and the map author define which version that you'll have access to. And one last question, do CAD users tie into their own ArcGIS server in the same location that Danielle was looking at the county server? Well, in that case, you have a dialog or a user interface where you can add your own servers to that list, and so you would be connecting to your server based on its URL. We provide you with one link to one server, which is ArcGIS Online, that at least you'll have one in that list to start with. And you'll notice that Danielle had her own. Okay, I'd like to answer a lot more of these, and I'll try to get back to you on these questions in other formats. Back to you, Danielle.
Very good. Thank you, everybody, for all of these great questions. To wrap things up, before we go, I would like to point you to a few resources. You can download the ArcGIS for AutoCAD plugin from esri.com/AutoCAD. Also, I want to make sure that you know and visit our ArcGIS Resource Center for CAD integration and help. You can get to many different resources from this area. Also, we have a virtual classroom course about working with CAD in GIS. And also, I'd like to direct you to some of our current and previous conference presentations. We post these at video.esri.com, and you could search for the keyword CAD. Your comments help us improve our seminars. Please take a moment to complete our survey. Just click the Give Us Feedback link to take that survey. We hope you enjoyed today's seminar. On behalf of Esri, I'd like to thank you all for attending.